We are going to call the Administration Committee meeting to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Burning,
Present.
Vice Chair Counter,
Present.
Supervisor Long,
Present.
Supervisor Fiedler,
Present.
Supervisor Shirley. I know he's remote. Yeah, he's on mute, so we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Is there any changes or amendments to the minutes as presented? Any changes to the minutes? Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll consider the minutes approved. Public comment. So we have 2 cards. Do you want to wait? Wait. Okay. Samantha McCluskey. Please step up to the microphone. Thank you.
I feel like I'm in high school doing a book club report again. I'm nervous. Hi, I'm Samantha McCluskey. I'm here because my husband and I are bidders on one of the parcels in Glenwood City in the, really nervous. The town of Glenwood. It's a parcel that is located just west of 128. I just wanted the committee aware that my husband and I are in the process of purchasing my in-laws farm, which does hold a property line with this parcel. So before you guys look at our address and say, why are you trying to buy this little lot of land? You live in Menominee. We are purchasing the land just north of that, and it does share that adjacent property line. That is all I wanted you guys to be aware of. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We'll close that portion of the agenda, move on to our business items, which are number 1, financial report for June of 2024. Administrator Witt.
Well, since I'm up here, I'll just make it from here. The financial report is in your packet. It's for the month of June. And as you look through that report, everything looks pretty good. Let me get down towards the bottom. All right. So the vehicle registration fees, you can see those. Those are continuing to come in, establishing that new level as we expected. On the sales tax, that thing's just up and down. You know, we had a really bad month in February, a really high month in March, and then April's kind of right in the middle, more down really than at $912,000. So sales tax, again, we're just watching that. We're behind where we were at this point last year, a third of the way into the fiscal year. So again, we're just going to watch that. As far as capital projects, though, we're doing good on that. And ARPA projects, most of those are getting closed out as we're through the second quarter, really with just 2 quarters primarily left with spending the rest of these ARPA funds. Are there any specific questions, though, on the financial report?
Supervisor Counter.
Just a couple. On page 30 of the agenda packet under the facilities, just had one question on the employee other expenses of $8,283. I know that before, I think we talked, it was kind of a generalization catch-all type thing, but
yeah. Employee other expenses are where credit card bills, if somebody charges something on the credit card bill and they don't designate it to the right spot, this is the default location for it. So we can look at Taylor, and Taylor's going to say, we're going to go back and look at that and fix that. So that's the default location if somebody doesn't code something correctly, and that's what that would be.
okay, thank you. And then on page, I did notice on the page 31, revenues, again, took quite a dive for the 3rd month. Do kind of still too early to forecast whether that's going to be a trend?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is it's sort of up and down, you know. It looks like, oh, it's going to be really bad, and the next month it was really good, and now it's, you know, not horrible, but on the low side of where we would expect to be. So I just don't know yet where sales tax is going.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Administrator Witt. With no other questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is consideration of 2025 employee health plan design changes. So right back to you, Administrator Witt.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Leaf first. He's going to go through and explain what the changes are. Really, though, the administration committee is the one that sets the health insurance plan benefit design or self-funded plan. So that's what we're looking for you at the end of the presentations tonight, is your approval on the plan design changes, and those changes directly then impact what the rates are. You don't actually set the premium rate, but what you set for plan design changes tells us what the rate should be.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm actually going to defer to eventually here over to Jay Counter, who's our benefit broker here. I'm only going to kind of talk about the on-site clinic portion, because that's kind of been my baby all the way through this process. But I'll turn it over eventually to Alicia Swartz, who's our benefit broker with Jay Counter, and she'll kind of go through kind of what our plan design is, and we both can kind of hang around and answer any questions that you guys may have. So one thing that I wanted to do before we get into the actual plan design is I want to give you guys some updates around the on-site clinic, because the on-site clinic will be included as part of the health design proposal. So we met back in May, and I had presented kind of the idea behind it and things, and you guys had kind of provided some feedback. I want to I took that feedback back, and I want to kind of address some of that today as before we have that conversation about the health plan design as a whole. First off, we're still actively looking at vendors. However, right now I believe that Reform Medicine is going to likely be the vendor of choice. They are a well-established direct primary care vendor within the Chippewa Valley. So they have been in business for over 10 years. They have on-site clinics. I mentioned the one at Chippewa Falls. They are the one that operate that clinic. They also operate the clinic that Dunn County works out of as well. So they are well established, and they have a very well established infrastructure as well as a business model that we would kind of piggyback on, so to speak. So one of the advantages with Reform Medicine is that by opening a public clinic here in Hudson, which would be the long-term goal, we would have access to all of their additional clinic facilities as well as virtual care options. So that means that our staff could either come here to Hudson or go to their Menominee clinic, the clinic that's at City Hall in Menominee. Either or would be available to our staff to see doctors there. Based upon the projections from what we would talk about, it sounds like the on-site clinic would open up downstairs either spring or summer of 2025. However, they do already have an existing Hudson location that we would have access to, so this would allow us to kind of do a soft 1-1 start. Again, we would kind of mostly route people to the virtual care options or through Menominee, because their Hudson clinic is quite small, doesn't have a whole lot of capacity, but once they move on site, they would be able to kind of build up, and then our staff would have really full access to that Hudson clinic. The clinic would be open to not only St. Croix County employees, but any other Reform clients, as well as the public as well, as that is Reform Medicine's business model. So it wouldn't be kind of a closed clinic that I had talked about with Chippewa Falls. One of the other things we have, because we have started to have a little bit more in-depth conversations with Reform Medicine, is we did bring up the New Richmond question. I believe it was Supervisor Shirley asked about New Richmond. They are open to getting creative. So I have actually worked with Bob up at Public Health, and they do have clinic space up there that they would be open to sharing with Reform Medicine 1 or 2 days a week. In an afternoon, there's some extra capacity there, which would allow us to have New Richmond access in addition to Hudson and Menominee, hopefully helping to address some of those location concerns. Before I kind of move on, I did want to highlight, because this is going to be an important part of the conversation, the out-of-pocket costs for the employees. So if they're on the traditional plan, they will get unlimited free visits, labs, and medications. If they're on the high-deductible plan, they will get unlimited $10 visits, along with free labs and medications. So keep this in mind as we kind of start talking about how the plan design and how the on-site clinic would kind of work with the plan design as a whole. I will kind of be presenting kind of employee-facing communication once everything is formally approved. As Supervisor or Administrator Witt kind of said, this is kind of step one. The second step will be for the KIT project later. But I will, once everything's approved, I will absolutely be out there communicating this and getting people in the door and getting people excited about it. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia Swartz right now, and she is going, oh, you have a question?
Question,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Supervisor Lund.
What about cost to the public?
So Tim, do you want to kind of address that, please?
Yeah, the Reform Medicine, if that's who we end up going with for the clinic, their business model is they have upfront pricing. So sort of like when you go into Starbucks and you look at the board and you go, I'll take one of those and one of those. With the price right there, that's what they do in their clinics. So you'll go in, you'll see what the price is for it. So that's a private business, though, that we're leasing the space to a private business, and we have a contract with them for our use, but they'll establish what those costs are. But that's how it works with that clinic option
And it's
setup.
worth noting that it would also be open to any other employer partners that Reform Medicine has in the area. So they do have some other, I believe it's a private employer that has offices across the river. And so they would also have access to that Hudson, to our clinic as well, in addition to our staff as well.
Yeah, and I might just add, the reason we're looking at it as an open clinic rather than requesting a closed clinic is the more people that they serve, the more doctors they would have and the more hours they would potentially serve. So we can get better service hours if we can get more people to utilize it. So whether we can get the school district or the city or someone else to partner with us, or just the general public coming in and utilizing that space, it'll provide a better service for our employees also.
You mentioned, what's the prospect for maybe having the school district participate or other entities?
Slim. I've talked to them, they weren't interested, but, you know, once they see it, then they'll get excited, maybe.
And I've re-reached out to them as well. Ken had reached out to them back in November and December, and I've re-reached out and tried to engage with them as well. Again, limited results. Any other questions for me on the clinic before I kind of move things over to Jay Counter?
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Supervisor Shirley.
Yeah, so if we're going to be open to the public, then how does that model look, at least for Reform? So we'll build out the clinic in the government center, and then our lease on the space to them will be basically deducted off of what our cost for service would be. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so the two questions are, how does that work? So the clinic space has an exterior entrance only. There is no interior entrance from inside the rest of the government center. So it was specifically designed with this option in mind. So we should be good that way. So there's no security issues at all with it. And then they're just a private tenant in the building, so they will pay a lease rate to the county, which will be at a market rate, the same as we would charge any of our other tenants that we look at, that we do have in the building currently. So we will charge them that market rate, and that's a revenue line item separate from the expense side.
Anything else?
Any other questions for Leaf before we turn it over to J.A. Counter? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alera Group, I was just correcting them on the name.
Oh, no, well,
I was getting a...
it's okay, yeah. J Counter Layer Group, that's how we go. Oh, I just did something, I don't know what. Oh, jeez. Oh, boy, you thought you were nervous.
Eventually we'll find it. It's down further, right,
Oh,
Ken?
okay.
Yeah. There you go. Just use the wheel.
Wheel, got it, noted. All right. Okay, Alicia Schwartz, J Counter Layer Group, one of the consultants that works with this fine team here. So we had a really challenging renewal this year. We kind of have been alluding to that over time. A lot of different factors, one just being high use. Sometimes people get sick. That's just what health insurance is for. It's just the luck of the draw, right? The cost and trends in healthcare are on the rise of 7 to 11%, just depending on the area in which you're looking at, just the cost to seek care is going up, and that's not going to slow down anytime soon that we know of. So in order to meet that budget shortcomings that we've seen over the last year, actuarially speaking, we're looking at a 23% increase to keep that budget kind of status quo. So what we're doing is we're looking at a number of things in terms of what to do with the budget to kind of get us up to at least 18%. That's kind of the target at this point. So we'll be doing some adjustments to the premiums between the county and employee share. We'll talk about that in a second. We're also going to be implementing some impacts to the plan, and we'll talk about those as well. We also have the resource allocation, which you guys have talked about in the past and can address if you have any questions on that. So some of the cost containment strategies that we have set up for 2025. The first one is to adjust the network. So your current carrier provider, Health Partners, has a model where they will offer a narrow network, but the change or disruption is just eliminating Mayo as a provider covered under the plan. We know just based on the data and statistics that Mayo tends to be a more high-cost provider in the area, and so reducing or eliminating them from the plan will reduce the overall claim spend. We're expecting about a 2% reduction total. From a prescription point of view, we are also looking at adjusting how specialty drugs are filled. You may have heard the word biosimilar, just a fancy word for a new way to manufacture and create specialty drugs that are currently in the market, and a pretty significant decrease in the cost of specific drugs. So what we'll do is in the plan design, we'll just require at least trying a biosimilar, which is a different medication type, to address a condition that a member might be on, and if that works, that's great, and if it doesn't, then they can go back to the medication they're on right now. Very low disruption overall, but a good cost savings. Leaf addressed to the on-site clinic. We do intend and hope that that will be a very long-term cost-saving strategy. Diverting claims out of your health plan and into your clinic will be a really great way to reduce costs over time. And then one other consideration that we're still in the process of evaluating is called a spousal medical reimbursement account. And this is really just designed to be a way to provide employees an incentive, so to speak, to come off the plan, leveraging another group plan. And then the county would supplement certain amount of funds to help them offset the costs that they have there, like a deductible, out-of-pocket, co-insurance, co-pays, things like that. So not necessarily a for sure plan to do, but something that we're evaluating to see that whether or not that would really help the county save money. Okay. Make sure I don't wreck anything here. Okay, so let's talk about plan design. So from a plan design point of view, most of the changes that you're going to see this year are going to be on the traditional health plan. You have two plans right now. You have a traditional. Traditional is usually going to be a lower out-of-pocket, lower deductible, and copays. High deductible health plan is going to be a plan that's higher deductibles and complies with the IRS to allow people to make and receive HSA contributions. So where we are seeing currently the highest utilization is on the traditional health plan, which is really typical. People who need doctoring are going to typically pay a little bit extra in order to have a lower out-of-pocket expense. And so the idea here is to shift some of those costs back to employees to help us alleviate some of the plan design. So you'll see a little increase on the max out-of-pocket. You'll see an increase in the emergency room copay. We're also adding the plan designs 10% co-insurance to apply to emergency room costs outside the visit, and then a slight increase to the copays for all the office visits, specialty, urgent, those types of things. And then lastly, we'll see an increase to the max out-of-pocket on the high deductible plan, and this is really to keep in alignment with the IRS guidelines to make sure that we can continue to make and receive HSA contributions on that type of plan. So again, just another way to look at the plan designs. These are the two plans that you have side by side. Again, seeing the increase in the copays, max out-of-pockets, and this kind of cut off things. But on the very bottom, you'll see the monthly premium, and we'll kind of look at that before and after here. So we look at this plan, this change in the premium, we're looking at a couple of different things here. The overall change to the monthly premium and the contributions from the employee, the county. The traditional plan used to be 89% contribution, will now shift to 85%, and the high deductible plan will remain at the 90% employer contribution. So you can see here the difference between the two, the 2024 versus the 2025 on a monthly cadence. That is about all I have. Anyone have any questions for me?
I do have a
Supervisor
question.
Long? Supervisor Long first, Ryan, and then we'll come to you.
Sure.
A couple of quick questions. I know in the past that we've had a couple different options presented, which it doesn't look like we have this year. I don't know if there's a reason behind that or not. Maybe it's the amount of the increase that really didn't substantiate different options. But it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we're also leaning toward making the high deductible HSA more attractive. Looking at the premium amounts, would that be a fair observation or not?
I think, yeah, that is kind of the direction. Again, when you consider when we look at the data for the claims coming into the plan, there really is more utilization on that traditional plan. And we also kind of, in the process of releasing these new plans last year, there wasn't a lot of change in getting people on the HSA plan. And the reason for that is there wasn't a lot of a difference between the deck factors of the two plans, right? They were very similar in both premium and plan design. And so it didn't really, the decision was kind of neutral to some extent, if you can think of it that way. And so offering these plan designs and kind of separating them a little bit really allows employees to make a better decision as far as, do I want a plan design that really helps me pay for my health care, or would I rather save money knowing that I don't seek care much, right? So there's a twofold strategy behind that. One is to really help employees make a more definitive decision, and the other one was to address some of the claims experience that we're seeing on the plans.
Sneak in here.
Yeah, you want to add a comment?
I want to address the first part of your question about multiple choices. Really, a lot of it is because of the amount of the increase. We kind of, by the time we got kind of all said and done, we had to kind of go with what we were able to get to, for lack of a better way to put it. We didn't have a lot of wiggle room, and Ken can maybe speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, I think the other part of it is the package that we're recommending for you is very specifically designed to put us in place to have a successful clinic. And so the changes are all strategically designed in order to promote the use of the clinic, which for the employees that use it will be a great option and will be more cost effective than their current choices. But it's going to be a change, and change is difficult sometimes. So we've incentivized it as much as we really can.
And one more set of additional comments. Some of the other changes that we made, say around the emergency room and stuff like that, some of that was to address specific things that we saw within the claims data to kind of help address those specific concerns while not necessarily kind of taking a broad swath and impacting everyone.
Go ahead.
Supervisor Shirley, go ahead.
Yeah, my one question was on the on-site clinic in the HSA plan versus the traditional. I'm not saying I like one way or another, but in the traditional plan, they have no cost. And in the HSA, they have a $10 per visit cost.
Yeah, great question. In order to comply with what we call a qualified high deductible health plan, the word qualified means it needs to meet certain metrics in order to make and receive HSA contributions. And one of those rules is you can't have first dollar coverage, meaning nothing out of pocket. And so we had to apply some sort of copay, and those are determined by the IRS. There's certain guidelines that you should meet in order to have the right copay, so to speak.
And the other piece, Supervisor Shirley, that'll add is that $10 that the employee pays, reform doesn't keep that. That actually comes back directly to the county. That gets passed through back to us.
Okay, thanks. I'm just curious why we didn't make that across the board, just a $10 per visit, whether you have the traditional or the HSA.
Truly, that's just incentive to use the clinic, right? If we could offer the clinic at no cost for everybody, that would be the most ideal. That will give us the best utilization, and again, in terms of cost management, and more importantly, continuity of care and quality of care, having a near-site clinic tends to meet those metrics. So the least amount that they can pay, the more likely they are to use it, and that's kind of the goal.
Anything else, Supervisor Shirley?
No, I think that should do it. I don't know how anybody else feels about the traditional plan being no copay. You know, their office visit, normal office visit is $40. So I don't know. Does that make any difference to anybody else?
Oh, okay, Supervisor Counter?
Well, just going back to that, the employees have the choice that they can do either the traditional plan or the high deductible, or, so they have that choice. It isn't that we're making a choice what plan they're going with.
That's exactly right. The idea is to offer two options in healthcare that allows them to kind of really.
Okay, thank you. That clarified that. The other question I had with the on-site clinic, does that give the county any additional liability exposure for having this operation that's running through the county and using the county facility?
Not any more than any other tenant would, I don't believe. I mean, basically, they have to carry all the insurance. They basically are just running out of our facility. I mean, if somebody slips and falls coming out of the clinic, that might be us, but anything above and beyond than any other tenant that we would have.
Any other questions? Did you have anything else? It was a lot. Thank you. All right. Oof. All right. So, Administrator Witt, what are you looking for us? Are you looking for action?
I'm looking for an action item to approve the health insurance plan design changes.
I would make a motion to approve the health insurance plan design changes.
Okay, motion by Long. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Fiedler. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion is approved. Okay, on to the next business item, consideration of tax deed bids. So, here we go.
Good evening, everyone. So the information, if you're following this in your packet for this, starts on page 43. However, so it first starts out with just your cover memo and information, and then there is the spreadsheet that shows all of the separate parcel IDs that we had advertised for sale. We did meet this morning, the tax deed committee. We did receive, of the 21 proper parcels that we had for sale, we did receive bids on 14 of them, and actually 3 of them received more than one bid. Following that spreadsheet, the bids are in the far right corner, far right column for you. However, following that is each of the parcels GIS map, and I did map out where some of the bidders live in relation to each one. So I thought I would just put this on your screen, or if you're following along, you can start following along on page 51 is where the first one is, but otherwise I can just bring them up on the screen and kind of go over the bids we received. And I would assume you'd want to take action on each one after I present it one by one,
No.
all at once.
Well, so they can do a group, or they can split one or two off if they wanted to take action separately.
Okay,
That'd be my recommendation. Generally, we wouldn't do 14 different motions.
so you want me to?
I think the system only allows 3 anyways.
Okay,
I think the first property will have to be split off only because there's 2 bids for the same amount. And so the committee's going to have to decide which bid to choose since they're the same amount.
Well, I mean, you can go through and you can make some decisions and then approve a package deal at the end, or split it into different sections. We'll work with you to get through that. But why don't we go through the ones that maybe have some questions, so you can see where the questions are on those. So the first one then with the equal bids.
Where's the spreadsheet?
It's on the screen. It was in the packet also. Okay.
the spreadsheet is on page 48, 49, and 50 of the packet. This would have just been added to the packet today after our tax deed committee meeting.
If you go to the website and pull a fresh packet, because the bids were just received and just opened up, so we just added the bid amounts to the packet today. Yeah. Yeah, just the public website. If you just go to the county's website and grab the packet.
It's actually it's a separate package.
Oh,
Oh, no, that's the committee.
was the board packet not updated maybe?
It's two packets though, like now you go to agenda packet, and it just downloads differently when you pull it up and go into the system.
Just let me know when you're ready and I'll start with the first one. Okay. So the first parcel is the town of Glenwood, parcel 0161026301000. It is, the map is up on your screen or on page 51 of your packet. There were two bids, both for $400. One came from Joe Draxler, and the other from Christopher and Jody Main. Now, the blue highlighted area is the parcel that's for sale, and then I did map out where those two other parcels are. So they both are adjoining property owners with the same bid amount.
So they're identical, there's no discrepancies in either of the bids, so it's just a matter of selecting one over the other.
Correct.
Do you know where the roadway is, driveways?
Well, this parcel that's owned by Christopher Main does come all the way down. It does come all the way down and seems to encompass this parcel, this 106, or 01612430150, but that is in someone else's name. But it does come all the way down when you highlight it on the screen. But I'm not sure if this is a driveway or roadway right here. I think it's a road. I think it's County Road X.
Yeah.
That runs through here.
This is showing right of County Road X.
So I don't know if you want to separate that one out and discuss it at the end and just have me keep going through these, or?
Yeah, well, any questions on this one that you guys can think of that would help you decide which bid to select? I'm gonna get a quarter.
Go ahead, Supervisor Counter.
On the Christopher Main properties, as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of making an assumption that County Road X has got a road right away that would show up on here. But on the one side, the road right away looks like it shows up on the, we'll call it the south side of X, or southeast side of X. But when you go to the northwest side of X, on the Christopher Main side, it doesn't seem to have any identification or road right away there. Is there a reason for that, or?
Denise might be more, or Heather might be more.
I am not sure of the answer to that question either.
When you're on the actual mapping and you highlight his property, it does come all the way down past that road and is just next to borders the property that is for sale.
Are they both developed parcels with a house there?
I know this is, the Joe Draxel is it's under the name of a farm. I would assume this is just a residential, but they didn't give me any other information on their bids other than just submitting the bid. No specifics on why they wanted the property or anything.
We could just reject both bids and have them rebid.
Do you want me to pull it up? Yeah, do you just want me to pull it up?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Shirley.
Is there anything on this spreadsheet of bids that tells us the property size?
Can you repeat it?
We heard you were processing the question.
I like the other one way better. This is not my fave. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this right here is the property. So this would be Draxler's, and this would be Maine.
I know you said Maine's comes across the road to
Yeah,
that
see the-
corner, but.
Yeah, you can see the lines right here.
So he's just going to the far side of the right of way? He doesn't own the whole triangle then?
Well, when you,
That's a different ownership?
it's not a map I usually look at. It's okay. Well, when you're on the other map, that's just the photo. When you do highlight him, it does highlight this whole area, including this area. But then when you click directly on that one, it's under somebody else's name. This looks like his is just right here at the very corner. While the Draxlers are right down here. This whole area.
Question, is there access to that Joe Draxler property off of any other road? So I think that's something important to look at, because if there's no other access to that property off of any other road,
Yeah. then
I think we have a decision. But I'm one of 5, so.
This is his whole property right here. And
Can we zoom in closer to the bottom part of the property?
This is his as well, over here, sorry.
So this is it because it's zoned in 2 different, like one is farm and one is residential with? Okay.
He probably owns the parcel too with the house on it, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Yeah. He just has multiple parcels there.
Yeah. I mean, but either way, if there is no other access to that, if he ever goes to sell that, then he's in a conundrum with that.
Yeah, I don't know that that'd be a great access anyways.
By the railroad
Because of the river,
tracks.
well, because of the river running through it, but.
Can we zoom in closer again to that, where the property is that's in question?
Yep. It's right up here. This is it right here.
See, the river cuts off the road.
This is it. And this, actually, where the house is not, that's somebody else. These 2 are Draxler. That's a railroad track.
And that's the only access to it from the road as it currently sits. There's no other road to the south, right? And then you got the railroad tracks splitting it to the other side. Are there any further questions on this particular, Supervisor Long?
It seems, just looking at these maps, it seems a bit more logical to me at least that it would be more, the Drexler property, it's attached right there as opposed to being across the street from the main property. So that would seem to be a little more logical.
Are you looking for a motion on this particular property, right, to start?
Yeah, I think if you're all in agreement, you can just lump it in maybe at the end with the accumulation of the rest of them. Or if you think it's a split vote, then you can vote on this one right now. So what I'm hearing is Draxler. Is there anyone opposed to the Draxler? right.
We'll lump it in.
All right, looks like Draxler for that one then.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is also in the town of Glenwood. The parcel ID number is 016-1048-35000. We also did receive 2 bids for this property. We received a bid from Robert and Diane Sue Swanepoel in the amount of $500, and also a bid from Mark and Samantha Mikulski for $2,000. And this blue area shows you where the parcel in question is, and then where the other 2 properties are in relation to it for the other bidders.
And I think this is the one that Mr. Swanepoel had asked if he would be able to speak on.
And we'd give both parties the ability to speak on it at this time, but we'll start with Bob. Yep, please come on up for the to the microphone. And then if, at some point in time, if we can pull up that map again on this one. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Swanepoel. I'm the owner of the property directly abutting and surrounding this property that's up for tax deed. I've owned this land since 1997, and I acquired it from my father-in-law, Edward Van Rance, who owned the property since 1945. This land has been in this family for over 120 years. Regarding the property under the discussion, this land became part of our property back in 1930 when State Road 128 was adjusted. In this adjustment, Vic Palowitz was the owner of that property, and he, at the time, agreed to that little sliver of land wasn't worth farming, so he told my father-in-law he could have it. Since that time, the property in question has been maintained, farmed, and used exclusively by me and my in-laws. First time I heard about this question, about the land, who owned it, it was receiving the mailing from the county. So I immediately went to the records of deeds to inquire as to why this property was not included in my property and for which I have paid taxes on my property. I then submitted a bid in an effort to settle the claim on the property in the most efficient manner possible. I request the committee award me the property for the following reasons. The property in question has been and is legally my property. The property has been given to the family of Edward Van Rance in the 1930s after building the State Road 128. I then required those rights when I purchased that property. At no time until this notice was I aware of any dispute or mistake in deed records for this property. If the committee finds the property lacks documentation for the transfer in 1930, then I would still be the property owner under state law 893.25 for adverse possession. Under state law, a person requires a claim to a property when they possess the property, which is demonstrated by enclosing, cultivating, or improving the property. They perform these actions against the owner of the property. They use and open to the public to give notice that what is happening. The land is continually and exclusively possessed for a period of 10 years under the statute. That piece of property has been farmed by my father-in-law and myself for way more than that. In this case, I have owned, tilled, and exclusively used land for over 25 years. It is open for all to see. It's right next to the road. Additionally, every simple survey of Google Earth images goes back to the very beginning of these images will show that land in question has always been part of the broader property and filed adjoiningly. Finally, you will see my mailbox at the driveway are on that property. Therefore, I ask the committee to award me the property as clearly it belongs to me. Secondly, I'd be happy to pay the bid I submitted to settle the claim. I'd also be happy to pay back taxes on the property as this would either a clear survey or record-keeping mistake from 1930 that failed to account for the transfer of their property, and I therefore owe the taxes. Thank you. Now, the only other thing I want to add to this is the map, or the little picture I got from the county. So This is the adjoining land. This is 128. This is where it comes across. And the problem with it is it goes right across my driveway. So I know people have told me, oh, they can't deny you the right of your driveway. I differ on that. I just don't think that as long as this has been in my family that long, I don't even feel that I should have to be going through this. Like I said, I put the bid in just to settle this quick and easy. I had no idea that I was going to be basically forced out. So if you have any other questions, I'll be right here.
So I think I owe it to Samantha to say anything. Is there anything else you want to add to what your bid is, or? Yes, if you're going to say anything, yes.
So I can't dispute anything that Mr. Swanepoel said. And to be honest, I've been a part of the McCluskey family for 10 years, and I always thought it was his land. We just put the bid in so no one else could take it from either our family or his. So honestly, I do think it belongs to Mr. Swanepoel here. But if for some reason he wasn't able to put that bid in, our plan with the land, if we were to win it, is we would allow Mr. Swanepoel and his family to retain the rights to it, to farm it until they no longer wanted to possess it. And then we were hoping to then turn our field that into part of ours. But I do agree with everything he said. Thank you.
You make me want to cry. That was the nicest thing I've ever heard in my life, actually. So thank you. Hold on. There's hearts and love and hope and peace and my goodness. All right. So yeah, I'm gonna have to watch Braveheart tonight to make an excuse to cry. So thank you, Samantha, for that. That was very kind of you. So with that, is there anything you guys want to make an amendment on, or do you guys want to make a motion on this particular property? Okay, we got a motion that the Swanepoel bid be accepted. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Long. Is there any discussion? We're in the middle of a. Is that, well, I mean, we're in discussion, right? So. Yes, please, go ahead. But just don't make me cry again. Yeah, come on up. We want you at the microphone, though, please.
I know you guys can make it's your discretion. With everything happened with his land, is it possible to give it to him for the amount of the $350 instead of his bid of $500? Since he has been farming it and they weren't under the impression it's theirs? No? Okay. I was just curious.
Staff said no off mic, but it's still a no.
I know. I don't even know what to do anymore. Like, I wish we all had neighbors like that. So anyway, we have a motion. Is there any more discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor say, oh, go ahead, Supervisor Shirley. You surprised me.
Sorry. So being the new person on the committee, I guess I'm not sure what the process normally is on this, but are properties like this, is there a process that this goes through? Because it seems as though Mr. Swanepoel has the right to the land, and we shouldn't even be having an open bid on it. So I guess what's the process on how these are announced and where they start from? I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because I don't even feel like it's fair that he should have to pay anything for it.
I can try to explain that. So this specific parcel that we're discussing was created in 2015 under an unknown name. So I'm assuming it had something to do with the rerouting of the road, as Supervisor Swanepoel indicated. There was a discrepancy when there was a processing of a document in a probate case back in 2014, so that's how this parcel was created, and then taxes were not paid on it. And so that is how it comes to us to do the in rem tax foreclosure process, is because the treasurer notifies the named owner on the parcel, if there is any, that there is unpaid taxes, and then we do notice, we publish in the paper. So all that notice would have been done last, I believe it was June of 2023, so all those notices went out indicating that we haven't received the tax payments on this parcel, and therefore it was going to be taken. We did have the parcel named as the prior owners, if I can just pull this up, as Victor and Emma Pohl, P-O-H-L, and that they were deceased. And so that's what the records that we had showed at that time. And because of that, we took the property, and then this is the process that we eventually get to, is listing them on the website and publishing them, that they're going to be for sale. And I can... There is a minimum required bid amount. So Wisconsin statute 75.69, which is sale of tax delinquent real estate, does require that a county can sell the property at the appraised value, and that the county may accept the bid most advantageous to it. But at the first attempt to sell the property, every bid less than the appraised value of the property shall be rejected. So we can't just give it away for nothing. I believe the appraised value on this one was $350, and Mr. Swanepoel's bid was for $500. So that's how we got to this, where we are at now. I can send to the supervisors all the in rem tax foreclosure documents regarding the case that we file and how that appears in court, just so for future cases you know what is filed with the court and how we get to this point.
Anything else, Supervisor Shirley?
No, I think for now, I can talk to Heather after.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none on this motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion is approved. Okay, next.
Okay, moving on to the next one is from the town of Kinnickinnick, parcel ID number 022-1070-20120. This one did, now that it's been brought up, it did have a minimum bid set at $350. We did receive a bid from adjacent property owners Thomas and Gail Anderson in the amount of $600. And this little triangle here is the parcel in question, and this whole area is their parcel.
I think she's just going to describe them, but there's no questions. We can just keep rolling.
Okay. The next bid that we got was for town of Troy, parcel ID number 0401312159996. This did have a value set at $500, and we did receive a bid from Ethan and Stephanie Berg in the amount of, and they are adjacent property owners, in the amount of $500.
Supervisor Counter?
This particular property, what is its, is this being, seen on here, but on your original information you were sending out, some of these were drainage easements. My question for you, is this a drainage easement, or is this that's being used for the development, or is this just a remainder parcel?
The description is that it is a outlot 2 drainage easement.
Okay. I've got there's a bunch of them that are going to be coming up like this, and at some point I'd like to talk about this a little bit with the members on the committee. I don't know if this might be as good a time as any, but yeah, because this is a big concern. What's going on here is, in Wisconsin, when a development is designed, they're required that they have to retain up to a 100-year storm event on that parcel. And so that requires them to put in all kinds of drainage ways and stormwater retention ponds and everything for the development. Now, when it comes to the ownership of these, they're either done one of two ways. A lot of times, the practice has been for St. Croix is they are put into a homeowners association for the ownership of the property. And so under the homeowners association, what happens is they're supposed to be, once the developer clears out of this, at a point when most of the property sold, now they have a board that's basically just the homeowners that goes in, and they're designated with the responsibility to maintain these stormwater management ponds, which can become silted in. They can be overgrown in cattails or trees, and they can give cause where they're not effective for what their original drainage was supposed to be. And so they require maintenance. Now, the other thing is when these are in cities and other municipalities, some of these municipalities require other maintenance, like for instance, City of New Richmond has a lawn mowing requirement. So these all have to be maintained and mowed around them, and that responsibility is there too. So the concern with all of this now is that a lot of these homeowners associations don't understand the management practices and how they have to be done, and they aren't hiring professional civil engineers and the people necessary to do the job and make sure that they're being taken care of. And now in some instances, we're starting to see these properties are being let go back, where they're just saying, well, we don't care about it. We don't want to deal with it. So just let it go back and let the county have it. And all of a sudden now we're stuck. I'll say stuck because we have the liability then to go out and do the lawn maintenance and all of these other things that are required by the local municipality under their ordinances. And as we continue to develop the county, we're going to see more and more of this happen because it is a requirement to have stormwater management on these properties. Now, there are some that they aren't going by homeowners association. They also will take and deed these, or they'll be part of somebody's property, and all of a sudden somebody as an individual is stuck maintaining a stormwater retention pond for the entire development that's all coming into his property, but it's on his property, so now he's the guy. So what we're looking at, and we've talked about this during community development as a possible option for the future on a lot of these that are set up this way, that we look at for the future and potentially for some of these outlots that are coming back this way, that we have a communication with the cities, or I shouldn't say cities, all other levels of municipal government, so towns, villages, and cities, so that we can deed these properties to them. And the reason for this is that they have a special taxing authority to be able to create under a overlay district that would cover just that development. And it gives them the opportunity to be able to charge for the maintenance of these things and do it in a manner that they don't get lost in the background. And then what we could consider, if they have the taxing authority, then they don't really have all the engineering services and stuff at these, especially towns. We may look at talking this over with our highway department and looking at them doing the management phase of it, but this would be a pass-through expense. So if we're hiring people or we're doing this management practice, this would be a pass-through back to the municipalities that have ownership, which would tax them in their in those overlay districts so that we can make sure that this is being done correctly. Stormwater practice is going to be it's a vital part that can make a difference for these developments. And in the end, either us or us at the county or somebody is going to be put into a position that we have to troubleshoot this for the future. So having a good practice now and trying to work this in for our future, I think in the end is going to far outweigh leaving it the status quo as how things are going on right now.
Yeah, the Supervisor Counter's right about the stormwater ponds and how they come up. The one area that I'd probably differ is I don't want the county getting involved in management of stormwater ponds. Creating small sub-taxing jurisdictions is not a viable thing. That's never going to happen. It's going to just end up getting absorbed by the county as a whole. And so I don't know that we want to get into the business of maintaining stormwater ponds when you decide that you don't want to maintain it anymore. We used to give it away to the local taxing jurisdictions, but Act
207. So Act 207, which was a recent law that was passed that modified provisions of Chapter 75, and one of them is that we can't just deed a parcel to a municipality. We have to put it up for sale first. They're given notice, so Christine sends them letters to all the municipalities in case they want to bid on them. I would note for these particular parcels regarding like the outlots and the drainage easements, any successful bidder that does win the bid, I guess, and you guys approve it, they have to follow the plat that's recorded. And so for this drainage easement, it does indicate that no owner or resident shall do anything which would interfere with or change the operation of the approved comprehensive water drainage and soil erosion plan for this plat. This includes but is not limited to building upon, constructing, altering, filling, excavating, etc. So it goes on and on. So any person that bids on this, if they're the successful bidder and you approve it, they have to follow the plat drainage easement note requirements. They're not, you know, they can't build on it, they can't do certain things. So it addresses some of Supervisor Counter's concerns, but I understand the bigger concern is, do these new owners, if they are successful, do they know this? Do they know that they have to maintain it as a drainage easement on that parcel? So the bid documents that we have on the website specifically indicate that bidders should investigate properties prior to bidding. They should do additional research if more information is required. The properties are sold as is. And we do that because the county does not maintain the properties once we take them. The statute, Wisconsin statute 75.14 paren 4 says specifically that the county is not required to expend any money to keep the premises sanitary or to contribute to the cost of maintaining a private road or to abate nuisances, but the successors are. So it alleviates any responsibility of the county. I think we had one parcel in the past where a tree fell down, and we said, well, we're not taking care of it because we're not required by statute. Any new owner will have to take care of that tree that fell down. So that kind of is a little bit of explanation of Act 207 and some of the specific statutory provisions.
Are there any other questions or concerns before we continue to move on?
I do.
Okay, Supervisor Shirley?
I'll echo what Supervisor Counter said. I think that's really going to become an issue coming up. I have a problem selling property when we don't know if the owner really realizes the implications of the maintenance on these drainage easements and whether they did their research or not. You know, I know we have all our disclaimers on there with the county's not liable and all that, but I don't like it's not a good view of the county and not good practice in my view to not disclose that on the property, especially when it's something that has to be maintained for that development. So I don't know what we do with these properties that we're looking at today. but we need to come up with a plan in the future, like Supervisor Counter said.
So if I can just, oh, yeah. And and we do get lots of calls from interested bidders. They do call and ask a lot of questions, and they're either referred to community development to help answer their questions on what they can or can't do with this. I can't say who specifically is called, but we get a lot of calls about these from people who are interested in becoming bidders, asking those very questions, because it's very laid out in the notice to sell that, you know, they're sold as is, and you need to look and investigate what you can and can't do with these parcels.
And it's on the like if they called the Register of Deeds office, that could be disclosed because it's information that's available. Okay, so this is we're disclosing it. It's on them to do the research, not on the county, and therefore we're putting it up. They don't do the research and buy it. That's on them. That's the way I look at it. So I don't really see an issue with continuing to move forward on this. Supervisor Long?
Yeah, it sounds like we have every reason, excuse me, every reason to believe and hope that they will follow what they were supposed to and continue the drainage. So I guess on all these properties, I would say that I don't see a problem moving forward on them. However, I agree with Supervisor Counter and Shirley that we probably need to really take a closer look at this in the future to make sure that these new property owners actually know that this property is a reserve for drainage, and that's going to be really critical, and they really can't do anything with it.
Supervisor Shirley.
Yeah, yes, I agree. But the tax deed does have all those listings on there that they can't build and the drainage easement, blah, 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 blah. But what the tax deed doesn't say is that they have to be maintained for the drainage, and, you know, if they have issues with silt buildup or any other pollution that comes in there from the rest of the development, that's this new property owner's problem. So I guess maybe that's something that we need to look at from community development, or what, when these properties come in with new developments, that needs to be listed on the deed, so that it's a little more clearly spelled out that way. I don't know what the answer is moving forward, but I think we need something additional on there, so when these come up in the future, people do realize a little more. And yes, it is their job, it's their duty to do due diligence, but I think we need to do a little better on how they're listing and what the requirements are.
So I think one of the things that community development can do in their committee is, as you can see, these parcels, several of them were owned by Todd Allen Homes Incorporated. So in the subdivision ordinance, there can be language that indicates that any builder that builds a subdivision needs to ensure that any outlots and drainage easements are deeded to the local municipality, or they're split in ownership for, let's say there's 20 property owners, they're split in ownership 20 different ways, so that each of the owners owns a portion of the outlots or the drainage easements. So unfortunately, Todd Allen Homes had all these outlots and drainage easements and conservation easements. They didn't have them deeded correctly when they did the subdivision, and now they didn't pay the taxes on them, so we own them. And so I think there's a possibility for Community Development Committee to address in the subdivision ordinance that that's a requirement of builders. They have to make sure that roads, outlots, conservation easements are all deeded correctly before that subdivision is completed.
Supervisor Counter.
Well, and again, too, we have to look at how the ownership of these things are done. If we're going, you know, for the future, that obviously resolves some of the problems as long as the municipality owns them. The problem's going to be convincing the municipalities that that's a good idea. They really don't want anything to do with the ownership because most municipalities don't have civil engineers or staff people that are gonna be able to do any of this, so you're probably going to see a pretty strong objection to signing on to something like this under county zoning if we have that type of language that forces these properties into their municipalities. So we have to figure out a different method, because the other problem we end up with this is a lot of times, even if the homeowners association does try to do due diligence, then they put everything together, and then they have another problem where many of the participants that are owners or they're members of the homeowners association, they just don't pay. And they force the hand of the association to go through litigation and try to get money back from these people, which it's much, much more difficult in civil court to try to get the funding back to reimburse all the people that did pay the bill, because they all have to pay the bill, and it's kind of like a partnership. If 6 of them don't want to pay and 4 of them do, the 4 that do are paying for all 10. So it becomes very cost prohibitive, and it's really going to be a way to set up that these things are all going to be failing. And if they get the idea that they can just let them all fall on a tax deed back to the county, then we're going to be put into this anyway, no matter how we think about it. So I just think we need to have a good plan somehow, and if we're going to be selling these, just beware that we're probably going to be seeing problems with this.
Okay, so we're going to bring it back to whether or not we want to continue moving on with this. I think everything's been exhausted at this point, so let's continue moving on with the rest of the properties.
Thank you. Okay, our next one is from the town of Troy, parcel ID number 040-1312-16000. This did have a minimum bid set at $450. We did receive a bid from Snooze It Offs LLC in the amount of $2,200. We did also receive another bid that was rejected as they didn't follow the bid directions and submit a cashier's or certified check. They just had a personal check for their 10% down. So I don't know who Snooze It Offs is, so I don't believe they're adjacent property owner. That's all the information I have on that.
This one, Supervisor Cowder, go ahead.
I noticed this property, town of Troy, and it's right off of State Highway 35, if that's correct. Is this particular parcel zoned in a manner that could see like large signage or something that would be along the highway where they would be able to purchase and get through zoning?
No, and looking at the plat, this is Outlot 6, and it is a conservation easement area, and so they could not put a sign in a conservation easement area. I don't know, possibly a temporary sign. It's possible that a temporary sign could go there under the county's town sign ordinance. I can look that up really quick if you want a definitive answer.
Okay, go ahead. Next one.
Okay. Next one that we received a bid on is in the city of Hudson. It's parcel ID number 236-2059-06000. This had a minimum bid set at $350, and we did receive a bid from adjacent property owners Paul and Linda Berdusco for $400. This whole blue line is the parcel in question. It's
So what is it, about 2 feet wide?
no, it's I can bring it up on this if you want to see it on here.
It's roughly a 2-foot strip that extends about 1,940 feet north.
Yes, I believe it's this whole, this thing zooms very, I don't think this other, it's this
So that
whole
gives
area
people
right here.
permission to walk up and down everybody's back doors and put up cameras. I'm sorry, but this is kind of crazy, some of these.
It is of this area here.
I got a question. Like with properties like these, where it goes in between multiple homes, I mean, is there a way for us to
Just adjust the line.
adjust the lines? Just a click, 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 computer changes it, everyone's happy.
And assign them to the property owners.
The
who
adjacent
surround it.
property owners close that, and there's a nice property line.
I feel like community development would find that, have been expressed that that would be very costly to do. That's, am I correct, Denise?
That's what they've told me, that there would need to be a survey, it'd be thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Yeah, there is an obscure statute that allows for a plat readjustment, but you have to resurvey the whole subdivision then. So it's just not worthwhile for the county to take on that endeavor.
With something like that, if we were to offer to all of the residents that are on that property line, would you be interested in, just for the cost of doing the work?
Yeah, it'd still probably be hundreds of dollars. It'd still probably be hundreds of dollars per parcel, and why do they want to pay it? They're not concerned about the 2 feet that's behind their parcel.
There's only one
Till
person.
They
get
could
the
have bid on
cameras. Yeah, till they get the cameras in their backyard.
I mean, all of these adjacent property owners got letters. They all were informed, and these were the only interested owners. And maybe they only want it because they only want that section behind their house. I don't. Chair Burning, do you want me to continue going?
Yes, please continue. Thank you. Supervisor Long has a question. Go ahead.
What happens, I mean, looking at this and all the homeowners affected, what happens if we just don't sell it?
Then
Then the county has to continue to pay for it.
Then it
It's
doesn't
right
go
off
back
the
on the tax
taxes.
roll. And so that's the problem. We just have these parcels that no one owns. We keep them, we don't maintain them, we don't do any upkeep, we don't do anything. And they stay on the tax, they stay off the tax roll. So our main goal obviously is to get these parcels back on the tax roll.
And how much is it on the tax roll?
For real.
What are we talking about?
I'll let Denise answer that.
If we're talking like $1.25.
Yeah, very close. $1.63, something like that. I mean, they had it assessed at $100, but it would be exempt, you know, if we owned it.
$1.63 a year is what we're talking about.
Okay, I don't want to belabor this, but my head is just ringing on this issue. Corporation Counsel, what is your opinion on us not selling this and leaving it as is?
My legal opinion, it's just that we follow the statute. We don't do any upkeep, we don't maintain it. If anybody has a complaint about the property, we just refer them to 7514 saying that we have no obligation to do upkeep. If there's a nuisance on the property, we're not taking care of it. Because we shouldn't have to expend the taxpayers' money to maintain these parcels. That's the purpose of that statute. The reason why we try to get these off, you know, back on the tax roll and out of the county's name is just because we don't want all these random parcels in the county's name. And so that's why we do this endeavor.
One more question on her.
Go ahead, Supervisor Counter.
So actually, I do need to correct one thing. Thank you, Treasurer Anderson. So Act 207 now requires us, within 240 days of obtaining the properties, we have to try to sell them within 240 days. I forgot that that was a new change in the law. So before we would just sit on some, I mean, we have some that haven't paid taxes for 8-9 years, and we've sat on them to try to determine whether or not, you know, who the owner is, if they're contaminated. But now Act 207 says within 240 days of taking the parcels, we are required to put them up for sale.
And that's based upon the Supreme Court decisions recently about
Right. And so there was a,
property owner rights after unpaid.
Now, is that, do we have to try to sell them? Does that mean we have to sell them?
but we have a bid, and it does say that you should take a bid, you should only reject bids if they're under the appraised value. I will look it up right.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Shirley.
When we go through this whole process of looking at these properties that are listed for sale, does community development department look at these and give comment back to staff?
Only if we have questions. I think that, so we reach out to them if there's questions. They also have been making an effort to locate these parcels that may have been missed when a deed has incorrect legal descriptions. So that's why you see a lot of these like triangle parcels, is because community development is trying to do a cleanup of properties, and they're realizing that there's some remnant parcels that were, you know, not correctly indicated in the legal description on the deed. And so that's why you've been seeing more of these like little triangles. And so we ask them questions when we have questions come up on parcels, but we don't actively seek out their input on every single parcel.
And I do just want to, sorry, go ahead.
I guess my issue is that with all of these little triangles and like this piece and this one in particular, if it's not an adjoining property owner that ends up winning the bid, then we're just creating a pile of non-conforming properties across the county. And we've done a really good job, I think the community development has, of trying to clean up that issue. Now we're creating more of it.
Yeah, the challenge is that we're required to sell them. Supreme Court says we can't just sit on it and hold it. We have to sell it. Any proceeds above what the cost is that we have has to be given to the last owner of record. So we're required to move them. You do have the ability, when there's multiple bids, to select any bid that's most advantageous. And we've done that, where we make sure that the adjacent property owners, rather than a non-adjacent property owner, gets it, even if it's not the high bid. But those are the parameters of the law that you're operating within. Did you have something to add?
I just wanted to say that, and I'm not sure if this changes with the new act, but the tax delinquent property for sale notice does state that the county reserves the right to reject any or all bids, or to choose or accept the bid considered most advantageous to them, whether that's the higher bid or a lower bid because it's an adjacent property owner.
And I can read what the new statute indicates. Let's see. No tax delinquent real estate acquired by a county may be sold unless sale and appraised value is published no later than 240 days after the county acquires the property. Any county may accept the bid most advantageous to it, but at the first attempt to sell the property, every bid less than the appraised value of the property shall be rejected. So that's where you said, does it say shall? No, it says may. Any county may accept the bid most advantageous to it. But if it's less than the appraised value, you must reject it.
Well, I'll just chime in here really quick. Every property owner adjacent to this property was notified. They chose not to take action on it. At this point, we're operating under a lot of different, like, there's the Supreme Court rulings, there's law. I think we just move on, next parcel. We choose, in the motion, whatever we decide to do, we do. So my head can't handle any more of this particular issue. So let's move on to the next one, please.
Okay. Okay, so the next number of properties are all within the city of New Richmond. They're in the Evergreen Valley Townhome Association. We received, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. We did receive the minimum bid for each and every one of them from Tyler Carlisle Properties, which is an adjacent property owner. They own all of these. They do not own any of these, but they do own all of these on the first one. they do own these on the second one. On all of them, they own adjacent property to these. They're like, they're roadways. They're like in between the townhomes, the road that everybody turns into and splits off for their driveways, just the roads. And they own adjacent property to all of them. Must be the property management company that has the townhomes. The only one that is different is the very last one. We also we received 2 bids for the last one that's in the Evergreen Valley Townhome Association. We received one from Tyler Carlisle Properties, who owns all of these parcels. And then on the other side of that very little road, Neil and Denise Hauger own all 3 of these. The bid we received from Tyler Carlisle Properties was the minimum bid set at $700, and the bid we received from Neil and Denise Hauger was $1,000. Otherwise, all of those properties that we received bids on were from Tyler Carlisle Properties for the minimum set bid. Let's try not to go through all those one by one.
Any questions on these ones? Okay, thank you. So what do you guys want to do with this?
So I think all but the first one, there's a high bidder on that I think you guys have acknowledged, other than the one that you took action on separately. The first one was they were equal, but you had identified Draxler as the preferred bidder there.
So would it be a motion to approve the sale of the properties that have an offer on it to the highest bidder?
Correct, yep. With a notation that Draxler is the identified one and that tie one, yep.
Is there a motion to that tune? Oh, okay, so we got a motion by Long, second by Fiedler. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Counter.
This is something where we want to consider as a condition of the sale that they are, when they sign on for this, that they are under the understanding that they take all liability that's afforded due to the deed restrictions that were placed on the property to begin with.
That is statutory under 75.14 paren 4, that they, as the successors in the property, are responsible for any, I don't know the wording, but like any issues that are on the property, any nuisance abeyance, they are required to do all of that. So we just quit claim deed the property to them as the highest bidder. So we don't warranty anything on the property. We just sell it as is, and then they're required to follow through with knowing what, you know, whether it's a conservation easement, if there's any nuisances on the property. So I would recommend against like a separate agreement and just refer them to Chapter 75 for their responsibilities.
And Chapter 75 is noted in the public notice of the sale, that they need to read that and understand that.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion is approved. Next up, we have resolution establishing library levy for 2025 budget. Administrator Witt.
I'll bring the mouse back with me next time. But so this is the library levy. This is the annual resolution establishing that. Our finance director has gone through and done all of the math on this one. And basically the way it works is we look at their operating expenses, how many circulations they have, whether that's a book or other type of media. Divide those two, you get a cost per circulation, and then we multiply that cost of that item by the number of rural circulated items. Rural circulated items are an item that was checked out by somebody from a municipality does not have their own library. And then we calculate that math, multiply the cost per circ by the rural circulation. St. Croix County has historically done 100% of the cost, which is that first colored column. State statute requires a minimum of 70% coverage. The highlighted column then is the hotspot funding. That's something we traditionally have been doing. That's a Judy Ochterhoff special. And then the total, adding those two columns together, is the total library levy. We do have one prior period adjustment to note for Glenwood City Library. There was an error in the math last year on the spreadsheet. And so we did make Glenwood City Library whole, but we do have to catch the levy up for that. So that line is an unusual line. We don't normally have that. But that finance director is no longer with us, so. Not that it was this mistake, it's just coincidence, but still sounds funny that way. So hotspot funding, I will say we did receive correspondence from one of the library directors telling us thank you, but by the way, that number is kind of outdated. Hotspots have actually come down in price. So I think they were offering that that could potentially be reduced. I've been promoting for years now that after the $3 million the county has invested in broadband funding, that maybe we don't need to pay for additional hotspots anymore, but I've been outvoted on that.
Supervisor Long?
So speaking of hotspots, do we really know what the usage is at this point and how that compares to prior years? I mean, is it declining? Is it staying the same? We need some sort of a measure to know whether or not how to continue or proceed with that funding.
I do not know what that usage is. We do have a couple librarians in the audience.
Go ahead, Monica.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Monica Levold. I'm the director of the New Richmond Public Library. So I don't have, because I'm not looking at my computer, so I cannot tell you exactly, but I did spend most of today working on all of county library statistics that will be coming to all of you. And at this time, we have 38 hotspots being circulated by 11 libraries. There is not currently any hotspot available sitting on the shelf, which means every single one of those is checked out. I can tell you at New Richmond, as of today, for 11 hotspots, all 11 are checked out, and there are 19 people waiting. And that's strictly at my library. The only library that may not have a wait list would be River Falls, and that is because River Falls received an incredible grant about a year and a half ago that increased the number of their hotspots. So of the, I'm sorry, I said there are 83. There are 83 hotspots being circulated by 11 libraries in the county. 36 by River Falls alone. That's by far the highest. New Richmond would be next with 11. I think Hudson has, I'm doing this off the top of my head. I think Hudson has 9. And then the vast majority of the rest of the libraries have either 2 or 3. 2 funded by you. We average a wait time of approximately 3 to 4 weeks per hotspot. So there's enough of a lag that if you put your name in on a list to get a hotspot, you will not be able to get it for about a month, slightly less. And that does change seasonally, but predominantly we are still seeing a very high demand for hotspots, and we're seeing them used in a variety of different ways. So I do know some families, we talked about broadband, some families do have access to things at home, but take hotspots with them when they travel to allow them to have access back home. There are also a number of families in our county that use them for homeschooling or home-based work.
as well. And so we hear that anecdotally through that. So I don't know if that answers the hotspot question.
I have a question. So when a hotspot gets checked out, is that considered a circulation item?
It is. So right now, how that circulation is calculated is that would be any physical item. So one thing to keep in mind is we do not count digital downloads, so ebooks, e-audiobooks, e-magazines, so anything that you're using digitally. However, if it is a physical item, so that does include all equipment, hotspots, projectors, games, like yard games, that type of thing, those do count in physical circ. I think it's also important to note that circulation is counted where the item is checked out, not which library owns it, and that is a distinction that sometimes is helpful to be made. So if New Richmond is buying a bunch of items, but they're checked out at Hudson or Deer Park, that circulation belongs to Hudson or Deer Park, regardless of whose money bought. And so that's one of the reasons that this funding helps to equalize, because we are changing some of those numbers based on where items circulate. And we are circulating not just in St. Croix County, but in a 10-county system.
So, Monica, I have a question regarding checking out of these hotspots.
Yeah.
Is it municipal residents that the library is in, or is it outlying like towns and villages?
It's both. It is both, and it would be really hard for me to say for sure. I can tell you anecdotally that I know for a fact we circulate to a lot of Richmond Township, Star Prairie, Erin Prairie, for people who don't necessarily have access, but we do also circulate to town residents.
So how are we able to get statistics on that to see if they're checked out via? I'd like the data on that, because that could help us determine whether or not we're already paying for them with the circ or the special tax from the county for libraries. So
we purchase the item and we circulate it. This actually funds our data. So we are paying an annual data plan for each and every hotspot. And so that's part of where the ongoing costs come from, is when we circulate the item to a person, that would fall under, the circulation would fall under that cost per circ. But there is an additional cost with hotspots to cover that data. A patron that checks it out from the library will never pay for any data or have to worry about that.
No, I totally understand that. What I'm asking is, if you rent out a hotspot 10 times in a month, you rent out, let's just use 10 times someone checks it out, and 8 of them go to the town of Richmond and 2 go to residents of the city of New Richmond.
Yeah.
If they're considered a circulation, or if they're considered a rural circ, then they're already in the special tax that's coming from the county. So what we're doing is we're double funding it. Then you get the circ, you get the circ credit.
See what you're saying.
It is. It's.
I do see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So does the data expense that you have, is that in your total operating expenses?
It is not.
You have expenses that are not in your total operating expenses.
Well, no.
It is.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
We don't, actually, the only expenses we can't count in operating expenses would be federal and capital, yes.
The monthly, or?
Barb, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Barb Kruger, Deer Park Public Library Director. The cost per circ is, included in the operating cost is so what we turn in is cost per item. But that does not cover the cost of the data plans. I mean, it would cover just a small portion of it, because the cost per item is like $5 or something.
Well,
and they only, remember, they get them for 2 weeks.
They do.
So that the time lag in there, and it may sit on the hold shelf before the next person comes to pick it up. So that the extra funding for the Wi-Fi hotspots helps cover that gap that occurs between the cost per item and the cost of the hotspots data plan.
So Administrator Wood, I think what we need to do for this year is, we don't have the data on how that works, but I'd like to have that next year for the next budget so that we can calculate the impact, if that makes sense. Does anyone disagree or have anything to add to that?
Kim's laughing at me. And I will add, there are a lot of people who, even with the broadband grants that went through and the expansion of the broadband, there are a lot of people who cannot afford the monthly rates. And that's where
It's an accessibility.
it gives them accessibility, and they do appreciate the county funding and the libraries having them. And some of we smaller libraries truly would not be able to have them.
All right, so here's what I'm going to say from an admin chair perspective, and being that we're like 8,000 here, 7,000 there, we got 23% increase in health insurance there, and I'm just going to let you guys know, like, I don't know, this is probably not going to happen next year, just so you guys are aware. So I would take that back to your boards and let them know that the hotspots are probably going away from the county next year. So then that, at least that gives you guys some time to prepare and your boards to make adjustments otherwise. Like you guys did, Monica, you guys did a great job shopping and finding hotspots that are way more cost effective,
So that when he mentioned, like, that was me, that I reached out.
Yep, we got a copy of it.
Yeah, so we were able to find a pretty good deal. I would say one of the things, and you'll note, Spring Valley has a higher number, as does Woodville. And that is directly because in a larger city, in New Richmond, Hudson, and River Falls, we may have access to Mobile Beacon and the savings we can get there. I'm not 100% sure that that would actually translate to every community in the county, and I would be very hesitant to want to push something like that if it would hurt some of our smaller municipalities that don't necessarily have the same coverage. So if you don't have the coverage that Mobile Beacon actually uses T-Mobile towers, if that makes sense.
Yep, understood.
So that can impact that.
Yep, totally. Thank you. So I would say just know that, go back to your boards and
prepare the data to substantiate our
To convince you next year.
Yep. Thank you, too. All right, so we need a motion to approve the library funding. If there's any changes, please include that in the motion. Is there a motion?
So moved. A second.
Okay, what are we, I'm sorry, are we approving it as presented? Okay, motion to approve as presented by Fiedler, second by Counter. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion is approved unanimously. All right, next up, we have a consideration of creating an AI or an artificial intelligence subcommittee. So I will take that one, if that's all right. All right, so with the emergence of artificial intelligence, exponentially, the technology exploding to do things beyond even Terminator 2 type stuff. Like, it's just crazy what's going on out there. I thought it'd be prudent for us to create a subcommittee. I have reached out to 4 or 5 members that I was thinking of having on it, not including staff at this point, but I'll get a couple of the staff members involved and just explore what is out there to help county government run more efficiently. Just OpenAI and Gemini, and I don't know what Microsoft's version is. Copilot, I do know that. I was just kidding. I was just making sure John knew that. Considering some of the powerful technologies that these are, how they've even just transformed some of the things that we're working on with our business, I think it can truly start not just in that arena, but there's more beyond that. So I'm looking for approval from the committee to form this subcommittee and appoint it. And before we do that, do you have any motions? Are there any questions?
I just had a question. I don't
Yeah,
have,
go
I
ahead,
don't have any,
Supervisor Fiedler.
I don't have any issue with the, with doing this, but maybe I could ask the corporate counsel, is the methodology for the creation and naming of the committee members, does that comply with the bylaws?
I believe it does. I can look up the section right now if you guys want to continue to discuss, and I will get the answer right to you.
I believe we followed it. I worked with the administrator on this, so.
You can create a subcommittee.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so the,
I think I just need approval from you guys to do it.
Yeah. And the
But
only,
we'll wait till she says.
the only reason I raised it was previous chairs have named, have done things that the chair wouldn't do, and the chair appoints committees. That's what happened last year, where the chair of this committee named people, the chair of the body wouldn't have named, he's responsible for naming. So I'll wait for her.
He is?
Well, we'll wait on me.
so standing committees' common responsibilities includes create subcommittees as deemed necessary. The committee chair shall appoint members to subcommittees subject to approval by the board chair. And that is under Article 4, Section H.
So we need a motion to approve the subcommittee, please.
I move that we approve the subcommittee as outlined in the previous discussion.
Motion by Supervisor Fiedler. Is there a second? Second by Long. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you. Number 6, resolution amending county board rules for referendums. So I'd like to just preface this before bringing it to the floor that there's been a couple of referendums that have gone through, not just the last couple, but even going back further over the last decade and a half, where they seem to be not just a little bit rushed, but also we didn't get enough information surrounding it, do enough digging, whether they were non-binding referenda, which are no longer allowed by state law, but ones that do levy overrides or even for if there were borrowing. I just want to add another layer for us to have to follow to slow the process down and talk things through a little bit more, especially when it gets to the board level, allowing the public to know about it a lot more, and also us as supervisors before making decisions to put things in front of the public to decide on. This actually has nothing to do with any current issues. This goes back a year where I was approached by a couple of my neighbors on this issue, and I thought it would be, there are some things I wanted to explore in a different path, but Corp Council suggested otherwise. Thank you, Heather, for keeping me in line. But I think the rules would help us in the long run. So any questions regarding this? Supervisor Long.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little perplexed at this. I look back with the help of our county clerk, and we've had 9 referendums in the past 20 years. 7 have been non-binding. The only 2 were binding were the last 2 public safety measures. So when I look back at that and I look at the results, it seems to me that it's working fairly well, especially when you look at the fact that we had the public safety referendums. The first one, our citizens said, no, too much, not going to happen. The second one was a little more reasonable, and they approved that. So it seems to me that by making the process more restrictive isn't really the way to go. I certainly think that we need to do a better job of communicating to our citizens when issues come up that we're considering a referendum and getting feedback on that. But I really don't believe becoming more restrictive is the right thing to do, especially requiring a supermajority. And the sunset provision, really, I would say, needs to be on an issue-by-issue basis, and having it apply to everything, I'm not quite sure is the right thing to do. So I'd like to know what is the issue and what is the problem that we're trying to solve with this resolution.
Just exactly what I laid out. Yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Shirley.
I guess for me, when we're looking at a referendum, we're asking taxpayer for additional money beyond what we're tasked to do our normal budget every year. I think we need a little more time and a little more restrictive on what we can do, because it's an additional on top of what we're already levying. And I would like to ask for council, I would like to add something in this when we make a motion, but I would like to know, could we add a line in there that if a referendum is moved on from committee, that it automatically goes to a committee of the whole, so that we can further discuss this in a lot more detail and have a little more back and forth work with all the supervisors, so that we can really understand what the issues are, really talk about it back and forth and really work on it before we go to an actual vote.
Supervisor Long.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous idea, quite frankly. Obviously, it's the committee structure that they need to fully vet this type of an issue, but then to have a full board discussion in a committee of the whole type environment, from an educational standpoint, I think is a great idea. But I think that's a terrific idea, but I would say that what was in this resolution is still not the right way to go.
Supervisor Shirley, are you offering an amendment? Oh, we don't even have a motion yet. Okay. Should we bring it to the floor to discuss it further, you think?
I don't think you necessarily have to bring it to the floor, because you could say, I want to do this with the addition, as Supervisor Shirley was saying, or I want to do that instead of this. So you could make a motion without bringing it to the floor and amending it at the same time.
Supervisor Fiedler, go ahead.
I kind of know the answer to this, but I'll look at Administrator Witt and ask him the same thing. I also don't have any problem with what Supervisor Shirley is suggesting, but if it's a matter of time, I would think there would be a number of ways we could address it. He's suggested one way. But, Mr. Administrator, how many committees of the whole do we normally have in a year?
2 to 3.
So, and as I recall, the last couple of referendums, there's been some time urgency to them, and we may or may not have had a committee of the whole meeting that intervened between the time we had to act as a board and get them on an election, into the election process. Am I generally correct in that?
Yeah, well, the election does have very specific time deadlines for that. So those have to be adhered to. So if the committee dilly-dallies at all, it can put you into a time crunch to get it in front of the county board in time.
And we could
but that's
always,
just a matter of proper planning and knowing the steps.
And we could always call a committee of the whole meeting for this very purpose if we wanted to. The other thought I had was very similar to what Supervisor Shirley was saying, that maybe just mandating that any referendum had to be on the county board agenda at least twice. So, I mean, that would give us a minimum of 60 days to consider it, and likely much more than 60 days, depending on when those board meetings fell. And so I don't have a strong preference on it, but that's another alternative to having a separate committee of the whole meeting.
Supervisor Cowder?
I would agree with both of those alternate proposals. I'm kind of against this as it's written, and I'll tell you kind of why. Is on a 2/3 majority, I don't think we would have passed the public protection referendum to even get it through for the second time to get a vote, because we were too close, if I recall, from what the stats were from the vote, even to put that public. So on some of these, we're looking at what the quality of what we're trying to do and provide these services for the county, and then that this can be waylaid and kind of put into the back burner or put forever where we just don't get there. We don't get the 2/3 majority. So you're asking a lot to get that many people to agree to go that direction. The other one was on line 14, with the binding of the future boards for funding loss. So if you're putting a sunset on these things and you have programs that are in place, fortunately we have Administrator Witt that kind of keeps us on our toes, and when things are coming due, he organizes and makes sure that it don't get lost. But on some of these things, if you didn't have somebody with the abilities to keep up with it, or something got lost, it could all of a sudden shut down programs that we're currently under. And where I get real concerned with some of those is things, especially with HHS and public protection, where all of a sudden now you're at a loss and you have to try to fill this in or get everything and get everybody back in agreement to forge ahead with it. So I still think, looking at that, if there's a concern over issues, instead of having the sunset, I think we're better to keep a program running, and that would give us time to organize and figure out either an alternative or say, hey, this just isn't working, and be able to give notice so that it just doesn't lapse.
Well, it sounds to me like we have a couple of alternatives that could be put instead of lines 11 through 15. It sounds like Supervisor Shirley offered possibly an amendment to say that it needs to go to the committee of the whole right away. And then I believe Supervisor Fiedler, what did you say that there was something you added as well? 2 county board meetings.
It would have to be on the agenda of the county board for at least a couple of meetings.
So Supervisor Shirley or anybody else, do you got, okay, go ahead, Supervisor Long.
I'd actually like to make a motion, if I may. I'd like to move that we, for this particular resolution, that it be postponed indefinitely, but in lieu of that, make sure we go back and review the process of the referendum to make sure that the county board, the committee and the county board has much more time to thoroughly vet any referendum issues, so that we have that opportunity to really talk through these issues and come to a consensus without necessarily adding specific restrictions that are outlined in this particular resolution.
And I would second that. Thank you. So is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is approved. That is, yep, unanimous. So that'll be redone in a completely different manner. Thank you, Supervisor Long. Next issue, resolution authorizing St. Croix County to enter into settlement agreement with the Kroger Company and agree to the terms of addendum to the MOU allocating settlement proceeds.
So that was a long title for a resolution. Sorry that I probably did that. So this is a resolution to approve it's another step in the opioid litigation. It allows St. Croix County to enter into a settlement agreement with the Kroger Company. This proposed resolution has been vetted by outside counsel, so all the required language is contained within it. I have reviewed it. It is appropriate. So we are asking the administration committee to approve this so we can obtain opioid settlement funds from the Kroger Company.
Okay, there's a resolution. Is there a motion to bring that to the table or to the floor?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Supervisor Shirley, second by Long.
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
And a second by Long. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion is approved. Request for future agenda items. Supervisor Fiedler.
Mr. Chair, could I didn't enter into the discussion on the last item, but I had a question that's related to it. Could I pose that? It's a short one to the corporate counsel.
Is that, yeah, go ahead.
Relative to the payments we're getting under the various settlements, particularly on the drug issues, the opioid issues, the Supreme Court recently had a major decision relative to the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma. Was that a part of what any of the previous settlements we'd approved in the past and had counted on for money, or is that something that was outside of what we'd previously approved in our previous so our expectations have not been dashed?
I had to rely on Administrator Witt for this, but that was outside of what we've approved so far. And I appreciate that because the first opioid litigations was my predecessor, so I did not know the answer. So thank you, Administrator.
Are there any requests for future agenda items? Okay, hearing none. Any announcements? All right, and the date of our next meeting will be August 20th, 2024. And with no objection, we consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you, everyone.